Welcome to Elle's Books and Curiosities. Today, I'm reviewing another horror book. This book has had quite the online presence, and the cover is absolutely gorgeous. The premise really grabbed me, so of course I had to read it. Let's talk about The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. Warning, this review will contain spoilers, so if you haven't read the book, you might want to tune back in until you're finished. It has spoilers. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. The atmosphere of this book is superbly handled by the author. It takes place in the Midwest. I got the impression it was during the winter time, but I felt this place. It was organic, raw. I could just feel the crunch of the cold grass, open plains cut by train tracks. Just awesome. Wonderfully atmospheric. If you're an aspiring writer, of any genre, I would recommend reading this book just for the sole purpose of seeing how Jones handles atmosphere and how he sets up an environment in a very, very real way. A place that has grit, sharp edges, hidden pain and darkness. It's very, very real. So the premise of the story is 4 Native American men that went on a hunting trip together. I don't want to give too much away, but in this hunting trip, they kind of broke tradition and killed way more elk than was necessary, more than they could eat or use. So we find out about this hunting trip as, the book kind of goes on. And then like 10 years passes since that happened, and a bunch of really creepy shit starts happening. It's told from 4 different perspectives of the 4 friends that were on the hunting trip together. We do stay with one of the characters much longer than the others, which was kind of odd to me at first, but honestly, the writing is so good, I didn't really mind. One thing that I will say, this book is an incredibly slow burn, which I honestly didn't mind until I got to Act 3 because the writing is so good. I didn't mind Jones stringing out the scares. When there is gory, creepy, awesomely scary moments, Jones handles it so well, but he definitely makes you work for it. So like I said, the story is told from the perspective of 4 different characters. So we have 4 different points of view going on in the book. There's also some other really cool elements like clippings from newspapers and things like that, which I really appreciated because you kind of get this sense is this really happening? Is this person going crazy? So getting the newspaper clippings was really great. It broke the 4th wall. So I thought that was really interesting. But something that I really love about this story is that because the author himself is a Native American, all of the personalities and characters of these 4, friends that grew up on the reservation together, everything felt very authentic, very unique, and not forced at all. So this notion of them doing something that broke tradition and kind of created this malevolent, vengeful spirit, that all felt very real because it was tied into kind of that Native American way of life. And, that aspect was just very, very authentic and believable. So I enjoyed that a lot in this book. Very cool. Something that I also just absolutely loved about this was that there were a few instances where the point of view switched to the malevolent spirit that was kind of created from this hunting trip that they were on. And you got to see inside her mind and her thoughts, which were just amazing. She was just so connected to the earth, just born from nature. He kind of was able to capture all of her past memories and generations in that of her animal spirit in this modern day spin of who she was now and what she was thinking and her motivations. So that was a real treat. I really enjoyed that. A horror book is only as good as its ending. In this book, that holds true for sure. First, let me just preface what I'm about to say by saying how much I loved Act 1 and Act 2 of this book. Yes, it was a slow burn, but it was a great slow burn because it was so well written by this author. I love this author's writing style and his amazing capability to tell a story. That being said, Act 3 went off the rails for me a little bit, and I'm going to explain why, okay? So I don't mind the slow burn through Act 1 and Act 2. If you're going to be like stingy on the scares, that's okay, because I know that like hopefully an amazing, cringy, bloody, awesome final showdown is coming in Act 3, right? Unfortunately, Jones continues to slow burn the reader in Act 3, which in my opinion was like super frustrating for me because like I've been with you now all this time. I'm following all these characters. He's building it up like to this amazing epic showdown between this vengeful spirit, who is a badass, by the way. Like, she seems super powerful and just fucking cool. And I just can't wait, unfortunately, to see her fucking kill people and just tear them the fuck apart, right? Like what are we doing here? Isn't that what we're doing? So we get to the third act and we're slow burning yet again, which was just so hard for me to digest. I was like, come on, like give me the good stuff. Like I want the juicy, gruesome ending here. And it ended up getting slow burned. But the most confusing aspect for me, and this is where there's a huge spoiler. So, vengeful spirit, awesome, badass, ready for her to tear shit up, right? And here we go with like one of the most unfortunate horror tropes where instead of this vengeful spirit, incarnate, awesome person, mother, dear elk woman, instead of her like killing them, she kind of like tricks them to kill each other. And I'm like, what? Like, come on. Like, she has the power to do it herself. Like, why do we have to play some like mind games here and like trick them to like kill each other and like draw it out? You know what I mean? And then the most confusing and like, this is where it went off the rails for me big time, is one of the characters' daughters, okay? Like, she's already killed her father. He was one of the guys on the hunting trip. He's like, please don't kill my child. And the vengeful spirit's like, oh, okay, but she does it anyway, right? So she wants to kill this girl. But instead of killing the girl, right, in the most epic, like, you know, critical part of this ending, the vengeful spirit elk woman proceeds to play a game of basketball with this girl. Yeah, you heard me right. They play basketball. I have issues with this for several reasons. One, I felt like it was like a storytelling like plot hole in a sense. Like, I understand like the concept of a shapeshifter, right? So like if a creature takes on the appearance of someone else, do they then take on the memories and skills and everything of that person? That wasn't really established in this book. Like all of a sudden this vengeful elk woman takes on the appearance of this girl. I'm like, does that mean she knows how to play basketball? Like, and why does the vengeful spirit want to play a game of basketball more than she wants to kill this other girl? Because like, that's why she's here. Like, that's why she was created. It was like, you know, vengeance and like, you know, like bringing like, you know, retribution, you know, to Mother Nature for what these guys did. And she's just going to be like, hold on a second. You know what I'd really love to do after like manifesting myself for revenge? Play a game of basketball. That sounds way more fun. I was like, what? Why does she want to play basketball? Here's the second like issue I have. Remember when I said Jones was like slow burning me, right? I'm like, okay, Jones, I'm with you, buddy. I love it. I love Act 1 and Act 2. Let's get to the good stuff, right? And he's like, oh, look, here's the good stuff. But wait, let's play basketball first. I'm like, what? You slow burned me again in Act 3? And you're slow burning me with a basketball game? Like, this just, it was baffling and super disappointing, like at the same time, because I was like drooling over every single aspect of this book, like every aspect. Writing, check. Atmosphere, check. Characters, amazing, right? And then we get to the ending and I'm like, what in the actual fuck am I now reading? Like, what is happening? Was it a good read? I don't know. I can't really tell. There were elements that I really, really liked. And yes, if you're a writer, I would encourage you to read this book just for the atmospheric element to it and how wonderful he can write different characters and this like raw unique voice, absolutely amazing. But the ending, I've read so many horror books that are so good in Act 1 and Act 2, and it just falls apart in Act 3. And unfortunately, as much as I love the first and second half of this book, I would have to put it in that category. So I don't know how many like gumdrops or thumbs ups or stars or whatever I would give it. I'm just not sure. I'm very confused. Since we're talking about horror, I'm gonna let you in a little secret. I get really scared to watch horror movies. Like I can read it and I can write it just fine, but like watching it, I get like super creeped out. Mostly, here's the thing that scares me the most, is like possession stuff, because I feel like not being in control of your own mind is probably like the scariest thing you could like ever imagine. However, I do enjoy monsters. So if it's like zombies, vampires, werewolves, it doesn't really matter. If they're tearing people up, I'm like, it's not the monster's fault. I mean, they have to eat, you know, like sure. Like, let's tear some people up and eat them. That's no problem. What bothers me is like when I see humans doing it, like in Hostel, you know, and like people are just like torturing people. Ugh, it's like fucking disturbing. But you know, if it's a werewolf like ripping limbs off, I'm like, that's fine. I love it. Dig it. Speaking of horror movies, one of my favorite like slasher movies is Scream. I love that movie. It's just really fun. But I always thought it was strange when Sydney, like in the sequel, she like goes off to college and like she's just wearing like a skirt and like flip-flops, and she's like, whatever, that was like high school drama or whatever, you know. Like if I had lived in that situation, if I was Sydney, right, and some crazy two guys like killed everybody I knew and I went through all of that and then I went to college, I would have like, number one, just like carried an AK with me at all times. Maybe had like 2 of those dogs, you know, those like German dogs, they only take commands in German. He just had them with me like all the time. But she's like, nah, I'm good. I'm just gonna go to college. It's never gonna happen again. Oh, I also enjoy a good haunting, you know, but like not like a disturbing, like super scary one where there are children involved, like more like a Victorian haunting, you know, with some like candlelight, some Victorian dresses, some long hallways, like a manor, like a Crimson Peak kind of feel. Yeah, I like those movies. So those are my thoughts on horror. Anyway, bye. And some peanut butter whiskey. Majesty.
Wow.
What I meant to say was, you know, like the wintertime seemed frigid. I'll be on my deathbed like, hey, you remember when you liked to read? Sorry. That was you.
It's the deer.
I know. Shot. What is it called? The third wall? The fourth wall? The fourth wall? Sorry. It was a tree.